it's kind of a messy process. You're using those to get your head into gear, and then after that, kind of things can kind of grow quite organically, and you start to build up a picture in your head and also on paper. And ultimately, where that goes is you need to be able to give your designer, who is an absolutely key part of any redesign. You have to give that person a vision, a path to follow. You have to be able to tell them whether you want to go up market or down market, older, younger, whether the magazine should be clean or grungy. You have to make them understand where it is you want to go, and they think much more visually than you do as an editorial person. You're a words person, they're a pictures person, so you just have to kind of be able to paint that picture portrait for them, so they can start thinking about how it is they're going to translate your story into a visual product. And then you also have to be able to articulate your story to management and convince people that you're doing the right thing, and get the higher echelons of any company to buy in to what you're doing.
So you talk about the designer, and obviously that's a critical relationship, because in most cases redesigns tend to be the editor and an art editor or designer or what have you get locked in a room for a few months, and it starts getting a bit smelly and the pizza boxes pile up, and the good work is done, and it's those two people working together. Tell me a little bit about that relationship. How does it, you talked about articulating ideas for them to sort of translate. Do you bounce ideas off each other? How do you work together, or does it depend on the individuals?
Well, it'll obviously depend on the individual, so I can only speak for myself, but it has to be absolutely symbiotic. You have to be working as equals. You have to trust and respect each other. You have to be able to take the mick out of each other and spend a lot of time together. You have to enjoy each other's company, I think. But generally it'll work something like this. You'll tell the designer what it is you're trying to achieve, an overall effect for the magazine, and then you'll break the magazine down into its sections, and you'll start sketching, say, the opening spread of the news section, and you'll sketch the little elements that you think should be on it and how it's different from the previous version. Essentially, it's a very rough version of what you hope to see, and give that to your designer, and the designer will go off and turn that into something brilliant, something that was far greater than you imagined in your head, and he'll come back, and you'll kind of look at that together, and you'll talk it over and amend it, and you say, oh, well, if only that was over there, or that thing that I thought was going to be brilliant is actually rubbish and doesn't work and is hurting the page, we better just take that out. And you just sort of tweak different parts of the page and turn the volume up and down, and it just kind of rolls along like that. And it takes you quite a while. When you're doing a whole magazine, you'll start off with one section, and you'll get it to a place where you're happy with it, and you'll move on to another section, and you'll start that, and the first section will inform the new section, but because the designer's been working on it for longer and you've been working on it for longer, you kind of warm up, and you start to understand, you start to have a clearer vision of where you're going. It's like the early steps are all kind of shrouded in fog, and you weren't entirely sure. Later on, that fog will have cleared up, and you understand, and you can start walking a bit quicker. So the second section is way better than the first. So you'll end up going back to the first and tweaking that to be more like the second, and so it builds a momentum.
So it sounds to me that there's a lot of drafting involved. You produce some work, it goes through both sets of eyes, comes back, you look at it again, and I presume that can go on for a while. And even then it's not done because you're revisiting. And you talked about looking at the new opening spread of the news section or what have you. It's interesting to see that you didn't pick up straight away on the cover. Is that something you would do last? Would you kind of think about the cover last, or does that, again, is it a kind of organic process? It might just come to you and you think, oh, this would be great for the cover, let's do this.
Yeah, Some people say you should do the cover first because the cover is the most important page of a magazine, and if you get the cover right, then that'll inform the look of the rest of the mag, and everything else flows from there. And while I agree the cover is the most important page of the magazine, it's definitely not the first page I would do of any redesign, because partly because it's too important, it's too controversial, too many people have an opinion about a front cover, and you could spend so long trying to get that right and satisfy everyone that you never start the rest of the mag. Partly because a front cover is also a front cover. It will always have a big exciting picture on it, and it's always going to have the masthead of the magazine on it, and they're going to roughly have to be in the same places all the time. So it's hard to be really radical with the front cover, so it's hard to give people a flavour of where you're going with the redesign if you start with the front cover. So I don't like to do that first. What I like to do is pick a section of the mag which is important, which is kind of key to the identity of the magazine, a section which you can change quite a bit in order to give people an understanding of how your redesign is going to make the magazine look quite different from what went before. But it's not a section which no one yet understands. I would never start with a new section that has completely fresh that magazine, that no one knew what it was going to be yet, because you kind of need a before and after comparison with the first thing that you do in the magazine. You need something that's kind of like proof of concept, that if this page in the old mag, say this review page, was where we were, then this new review page is where we're going to go. So that's what I like to start with first.
So that's an expression of the differences between what went before and what you're going towards, rather than ploughing a new furrow, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your new furrow is the difference you're making between this very familiar page and the one that's going to replace it. But if you come up with a section that never existed in the mag before, then no one's got any comparison to make, so they won't understand the difference you're making to the redesign. And if you start with the front cover, then people are going to agonise over it for weeks, potentially. So that itself wants to be, I think, put to one side until you've got a clearer idea of the way that you're going.
So you talked about, I mean, GamesMaster is quite an unusual example in that it was originally a licensed product from the TV show. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And it's also a really long-running games magazine, because quite often there's that inbuilt sort of obsolescence of if you're a PlayStation 1 magazine and PlayStation stopped selling. So it's quite different. But so you had all that to contend with, heritage and a maturing audience, and all of that was part of your kind of your considerations when you look for the direction you're going in. But I imagine as well, there's a lot comes from you. There's a lot comes from influences on you and your views about what makes a great magazine. How does that work? How do you draw on other influences, and how do you express your vision through a redesign, irrespective of the kind of immediate need to rescue sales or freshen up?
If I'd done redesigns where I was editor of that magazine, and redesigns where I kind of came in with a fresh pair of eyes to the magazine, and the two are quite different things. If I'm the editor of the magazine, if I know that magazine inside and out because I've been working on it day in, day out for a few years, then I'll have, over that time, I'll have been building up in my head a kind of all these ideas for the mag that I'd want to do if only I'd had the time, if only there was a few spare moments in the day to kind of really sit down and think, well, how would we do this? And there'd be things about that magazine which I'd be thinking, well, they don't really work very well, or they could work so much better if only we could tweak them and do something different. Or there'd be all kinds of things I'd throw away, and all sorts of new things I'd bring in. And I kind of know that in my